According to Wikipedia, you have posted videos that mock trans people. Do you want to apologize for that while you're here?
Yeah.
I would like to apologize that.
And now it's time for another interview on the Babylon Bee podcast.
Folks, this really upsets me. Government officials are threatening the ability of churches, Christian ministries, and people of faith like you and me to freely live out the gospel, to minister to those in need, and to express what we believe. Friends, we must no longer stay silent. The great folks at Alliance Defending Freedom are on the front lines of this battle. They defend everyday Americans like you and me in court, free of charge, whose First Amendment freedoms and God-given rights are being violated. And we need to stand with them. Join with ADF and be a champion for freedom. They can't do it without our help. Just $19 a month will help fuel the fight to protect our freedoms. Visit joinadf.com/B and pledge your monthly gift of $19 or more to ADF. And together, we will boldly advance our right to live and speak the truth. Go to joinadf.com/B and help defend faithful Americans with your gift today.
Hey guys, welcome to the interview show. Very, very excited to be on with you guys today. It's going to be a lot of fun. We are at the Babylon Bee, if you didn't know.
And we have an awesome guest with us today. Somebody we've been trying to connect with for a while. One of the funniest guys on the internet, JP Sears, is here.
Yeah.
Let's say more about this guy's awesomeness. I mean, he's fantastic.
Yeah, we were just saying, is a good-looking ginger. You don't see that
he's
very
he's really
often.
virile. I didn't expect that, but since he's in the studio now, I can kind of feel it, the virility.
Is it making you uncomfortable?
No, and strangely enough, I'm very comfortable with that sort of thing.
Adam, do you know what virile means?
I do.
What does it mean?
It's sort of masculine strength and fertility and.
Dude, thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Like, you look like you could probably have a lot of babies and.
Thank you.
Maybe not have the babies, but you know what I mean.
Well, it's 2023. I can have babies.
You can do what you want.
Bigot.
Isn't that's true? That's so true. And a lot of your material is kind of about this thing that we're just joking around.
Yeah, the men are women, women are men, and also gender doesn't matter, but it also matters so much that you might need to cut parts of your body off.
Yeah.
So gender,
I've noticed you're very comfortable in a swimsuit. The tuck-friendly kind.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get to that point? I want to know. Adam was wondering.
About my comfort there.
Yeah.
It's more of you're not comfortable in a women's swimsuit until you're in a women's swimsuit.
And then you're like, wow.
It's like I don't know if truth is an emotion, but if it was, that's just what you feel when you're in the women's swimsuit. It's like this sense of power. I'd imagine it's similar. Like, have you ever spent much time clubbing baby seals?
No, I haven't spent
Adam,
a lot of time.
Tried it once, not a fan.
You look like you've clubbed baby seals. Anyway, but the sense of power you get when you're clubbing the baby seals, particularly if you've got them tied up, that's what you feel
wearing a woman's
as a man, a person identified as a man wearing a swimsuit identified as a woman's swimsuit.
And
it's great.
Clubbing baby seals. I've always wanted to try.
Now, because of these videos on Wikipedia, according to Wikipedia, you have posted videos that mock trans people. Do you want to apologize for that while you're here?
Yeah.
I would like to apologize that Wikipedia exists.
Okay.
It's
to everyone out there, this is an official apology.
Just talk about hey, we're combating misinformation by just propagating misinformation as though it's objectively true. But I'm not supposed to look at that. I've looked at my Wikipedia page, I don't know, somewhat recently, and they definitely have a negative spin on me. Conspiracy theorist. I'm like, yeah, of course I am, but you're writing it like it's a bad thing. And
you edit that in yourself. You're like, hey, I'm a conspiracy theorist.
They were just like comedian. I'm like, no, we got to create some controversy.
Way more to
here.
me than that.
Vice News, which is just like degenerated journalism. It's not journalism by any stretch. A few months ago, they wrote a smear piece about me, and it was kind of, transphobic. They had a picture of me from a video wearing women's clothing, which apparently they didn't accept my truth. They thought I was mocking women, which is hateful of them. But they were writing like all the things, like he is an anti-vaxxer. He's a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, there is nothing wrong with this article. This is very accurately written. It's just, they're assuming it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing.
I think over the last few years, we've kind of realized that the conspiracy theorists have had it right about 98% of the time.
Yeah.
They've gotten a lot of things right.
Yeah.
The only one I can think of that we've gotten wrong was there was so much hoopla going around. I think it was, what the heck was it? Like October 3rd or 4th. So just recently, the government sending out like an emergency test broadcast to everybody's phone. You know, there were a lot of theories around
11/24 or something on that day.
You know, an EMP attack. It's going to ruin all your devices or activate people with nanotechnology from wherever that came from. But to my knowledge, none of that was actually the case. So it's, as a proud conspiracy theorist, I will say, it's best to be wrong.
Yeah. It's best to, you mean to be wrong in terms of what the narrative is, or to be wrong in terms of a conspiracy theory?
In the sense of when we have a conspiracy theory about like, hey, here's something devious they're going to do to us. It's good to be wrong because it means, oh, cool. Like we didn't get enslaved that day.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Although the whole Israel thing did happen right after all that went down, that alarm happened. And
that is true.
Yeah, I didn't. Maybe that's connected.
So, dude, it's definitely connected now that you mentioned that, and I'm feeling emotional excitement. Like it feels very connected. Based on the emotion I feel, it gives me a sense of certainty, and that feeling of certainty convinces me that my current level of thinking is correct.
So is this how you came to the anti-vax stuff? Is through your emotional connection to your, truth?
Yeah.
Truth emotion.
Very much truth emotion. I will tell you, as I know the Babylon Bee, one of its missions is to make people laugh. And another mission is to convert everybody into being an anti-vaxxer.
And to Christianity. Yeah, we want to convince.
Well, anti-vaxxer is the same as Christianity.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Mark of the beast, bro.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Wake up.
Yeah.
Educate yourself. Look into it.
That's right.
Before I had my little boy, I was like, I've been studying natural health since I was 18 years old. So I was already aware, like, hey, with the jabs, before the Corvid ones, there's some negative things that can happen to people. So as my wife and I were thinking about kids, we were having discussions like, dude, do we get them injected or not? And we were definitely not on board with all, I think it was 74 shots that a child's supposed to have before the age of 12.
Oh, yeah.
So but it's like, I think some of them are probably.
Yeah, did you pick and choose like which ones you like?
So
flipped a coin for each one.
Because I care about my child.
This one causes autism. This one doesn't.
Yeah,
flip the coin.
I would like an autistic child. They're just going to be a little more tame.
Please.
So before we had our little boy, I was in this dilemma, like which ones do we give him? And so admittedly, I was a little anti-vax, but the past 3 years, I've opened my mind, my eyes, done my own thinking, and now I'm just completely anti-vax.
Now, if someone gets vaxxed, can you suck the venom out right away like a snake bite?
I don't know.
Did you cut X's over it with a pocket knife and like suck the poison out?
Well, actually, now I identify as a doctor. So my truth is, yes, you can do it, but you don't want to do it.
I see.
Okay, you don't want to because then you get it in your mouth.
Yeah, and you need all the DNA and genes that aren't supposed to go into the child's body. You want those in the child's body.
Now, you mentioned Christianity briefly. A few months ago, you posted a non-comedy video to your YouTube channel where you said you changed your mind about God. And it got a lot of views. It got 1.5 million views.
I haven't laughed so hard in a long time.
A non-comedy video.
And you described how you used to describe yourself as spiritual but not religious, and now you've accidentally become Christian, as you described it. How did that come about?
Trip into Christianity.
Yeah, well, first off, I so appreciate you caring so much about the question, Adam, that you had to read it off the screen.
That's how we do things here.
Yeah. Could you cue up my teleprompter here?
Can we go back to his name? I don't want to forget who it is.
JP. No, yeah, man. I felt very called to make that video, and it's weird. A non-comedy video going on my comedy YouTube channel that became the best performing video in months, and one that really gave me a feeling of inspiration of. That's like biofeedback of where a lot of people are at. Like they care about God. And I think you look at all the problems in the world, my point of view, my delusional perspective, you boil it all down, is these problems all have one common denominator, and it's people being disconnected from God, disconnected from faith. So yeah, in what I changed my mind about, we were talking before the show, I lived in North County, San Diego for 10 years, from 2004 to 2014, and in the Encinitas area. And that's kind of like the new age spiritual capital of the world. I mean, you run into guys at a coffee shop, they're wearing white, they're wearing, mala beads, they're holding eye contact way longer than you want them to. They're trying
shaking hands too long.
No, they don't shake hands. I mean, they're giving you a hug. And,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I was so into the new age spirituality for a long time. And quite honestly, I got a lot of benefit from it. That was the first sort of door I walked through where anything about the divine made sense to me. And as I removed myself from that world, like moving out of California, I started realizing pretty quickly how I had blinded myself, how I was having a significant egotistical nature expressed through the spirituality. And I start realizing, hey, there is a lot of propaganda in this new age spiritual movement, a lot of good and a lot of BS propaganda. And one of the pieces of propaganda that I fell for many years was, hey, if you're spiritual, you're evolved. But if you're religious, you're just old, dogmatic, and you just don't get it.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's corruption in religion as well. The devil masquerades as an angel in disguise. Anytime you have something good, you're going to have evil trying to penetrate through that. And nonetheless, I had written off religion, just thought it was old dogmatic BS. Yet the past few years, I've accidentally become more Christian. Haven't even tried, but accidentally become more Christian, where I look at traditional values and perspectives. They make way more sense to me now than they ever had before. And I'll share this. You didn't ask, so here it comes. After my live stand-up comedy shows, I do VIP Q&As. And a lot of people there have shared with me, hey, JP, me too. I've become more Christian the past 3 years. I haven't been trying, but I have been. And one, I think that's really cool. And two, my hypothesis and why that is for people, including myself, we're accidentally becoming more Christian. Why is that? I don't think evil's ever been more apparent in our world during my lifetime. And when, evil comes from Satan. And by the way, if you want to know what evil is, according to my definition, would you like to know, Jarrett?
I'd love to. Please.
Adam, do I have permission to telepathically channel what you want me to say through my mouth?
Ready, go.
to me, my working definition of evil is anytime someone tries to control another person in a way that's not in their best interest. Which, by the way, controlling another person, most of the time, that's not going to be in their best interest. Yeah. Exceptions, like if you grab your 2-year-old because he's trying to run out onto the road, cool, that's control in their best interest. So we've seen a lot of control attempts and campaigns and agendas in our world the past 3 years. So ultimately, I think that stems from evil and that stems from Satan. So nonetheless, in my lifetime, evil and Satan, it's never been more apparent and obvious in our world than it is now. And something happens. If you're not willing to sell the space in your body where your soul should be, if you're not willing to sell that out for a sense of belonging or a sense of virtue signaling or just for the ease of not having to do your own thinking, but just like, tell me what to think. Okay, yeah, that's okay. That's what I think. If you're not willing to do that, you naturally polarize in the opposite direction in the presence of evil. And oftentimes, if you're awake, you do that. If you're woke, you go towards it. Oh, that thing over there, that's a good thing. But it's actually the devil masquerading as an angel in disguise. So as you just naturally polarize in the opposite direction from evil, what's in that direction?
Candy. No,
candy.
Wait, I don't think I was paying attention.
That's what I was going to say. God. No, of course, God's in the opposite direction. It's kind of like if someone...
Jesus. That's right.
Jesus.
That's always the answer. Anyway.
Jesus. Yeah. Jesus. This is God's son. Yeah. So it's kind of like if someone walked into this room with really strong body odor, you'd naturally be leaning away. So I think...
Some people are drawn towards it, though, and you would call them woke.
Yeah. It validates their lack of self-responsibility and hygiene. So long story short, dude, I feel like I'm making this answer so absurdly, stupidly long.
Not at all.
No, this is good.
Thank you for affirming my...
And I'm still channeling what I want you to say.
So what Adam wants me to say next is...
in a positive way.
That's the gist of why I think I've accidentally become more Christian. Combine that with I've become a father in the past 3 years. That freaking changes you. So nonetheless, Christian values, I'm not going to pretend to be a perfect Christian by any stretch or the most informed Christian, but I'm way more Christian than I used to be. And I think those are the reasons.
Before you came into the New Age spiritual movement, were you raised with any Christian beliefs or any spiritual influence when you were growing up?
Yeah, I like to say I was raised pretend Catholic.
Okay, yeah.
And
got it.
Sorry, I almost just threw up. And I think why that is...
talking about the Catholics.
Like my mom, she was raised super Catholic, went to the Catholic school and church every Sunday, all that stuff. So anytime my grandfather was around, my mom would be pretending like we always go to church, but we really never did. The only time we would go to church is when I was of the age to get the first communion in Catholicism. We went to church for a series of weeks so that I would somehow qualify for being first communioned. I forget what the ceremony is.
I think there's like a certain amount you have to go and standard. They have standards.
Mm-hmm. They have standards. And then, of course, if I spent the night at my grandma and grandpa's house on a Saturday night, then we go to church the next morning. So I was exposed to a bit of religion growing up, but it wasn't pushed down my throat. And I wouldn't necessarily say that's the best way to do it for kids, but it worked out well for me where I got a sense of it, but I also had freedom where I didn't really need to become super rebellious against religion out of defiance to my parents and, wear black clothing and
eye makeup,
vote for Biden.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at.
It's very interesting. You're talking about, I think this is a great concept and we can talk about it more, but the idea that it seems like good is getting better and bad is getting worse somehow as we move forward. And I know C.S. Lewis talks about that. He has the concept towards the end that good is getting better, that good will get better and bad will get worse before everything culminates. At the end, he talks about it in The Abolition of Man, talks about it in That Hideous Strength, which Kyle hates. Kyle hates That Hideous Strength. I want to make that
He's full of hate.
That. He's full of hate towards that hideous strength. It's a good book. Anyway, but you should. Anyway, that concept's very interesting to me because it does seem like in our culture right now that it's becoming clearer and clearer, like who are the people that are totalitarian, authoritarian control people who are trying to separate from God and good and love and protection of innocence and things like that. And then there's the other side that's really trying to raise up and stand up in opposition. And I love being on the side of the people that are kind of obstinately standing against that. I think it's important for people to do, and I think it's a good thing. And I'm glad you're doing it. So that's an awesome thing that you're doing, standing up against these idiots that are saying things that are not true.
Yeah. I honestly think many of them are, especially the figureheads. I think many of them are doing the devil's work. They're being used to propagate evil. And I would also say most of them probably don't know they're being used by Satan. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of like if you want to control someone, the best way to do that is make sure they don't know that you are controlling them. Yeah. Best way to keep someone under control. So I think that's what the devil does. And things have been amplifying lately. So people don't, one of the best things that the devil ever did is convince us that he doesn't exist. I think that's one of the best things. Yes. But secondly, so you are talking about the devil as if he's a person. I'm very interested to know what is your perspective on what Satan is? Is he personal? Is he a real being? Yeah, I mean, in human form, he's Anthony Fauci. Sometimes he'll shapeshift into Klaus Schwab.
Especially when he's wearing that weird Star Trek outfit.
Dude.
That's crazy.
Dude.
That's I want to take over the world. Where's the closet? I need the best outfit for it.
Dude, if I was Klaus's advisor, I'd be like, bro, I don't like what you're doing, but just to help your cause a little bit, don't wear that. You look it too obvious.
Yeah, that's right. It's like you and Thanos.
He ordered a villain costume from Halloween store.
I need this. What is this?
But yeah, you know what the devil is. I certainly don't know, but that's not going to stop me from trying to answer the question. Yeah. I would guess some sort of subtle energy or consciousness. Maybe because it's the devil, it's an insane lack of consciousness. It's like a black hole in freaking satanic form. So yeah, I don't know. But I'm curious, do you guys have an idea or an opinion on what the devil actually is?
Yeah. I mean, I believe the devil is a fallen angel. I think he's a very real entity. I think he can manifest himself in the world. I don't necessarily think of him as being in or being represented by a specific person on earth, but I think he can influence people in those ways. And his ultimate goal, I think, is to it's anything that leads you away from God in any way. He doesn't care if you go to a pagan religion. He doesn't care if you're an atheist. He doesn't care if you worship him. He doesn't care if you worship yourself. It's just anything that drives you away from God.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. But I agree with you. I think he's a personal being. I think he has limits. I think he's got a large hierarchy of underlings. I really do think that demons exist, and I think they communicate with each other. I think they have to use language. I don't think they have, I don't know, maybe they can telepathically communicate, but I don't know. It just seems like they have, I agree. I think it has to do with pulling you away from God. And the way he does that oftentimes, and you look in scripture too, you look in Genesis, and you might even look, even when Jesus is dealing with the devil, it's really interesting. You kind of see those interactions. The devil always has the same approach. Whenever he approaches a person, and he says first with Adam, then with Jesus, or with Eve, and he's like, "So did God really say that? You really say that?" He doesn't ever go he didn't say that. That's not true. He goes, "Did he really say that?"
Compelling you to question it rather than just telling you, which I would imagine if he can get you to convince yourself, it's more powerful than him or someone else convincing you that God doesn't exist.
Well, totally. And I think the original fall has to do with the enemy, the devil, saying exactly that to Eve, and saying, because God says, if you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will surely die. And so this is the one thing Adam and Eve aren't allowed to do. And then Satan comes in and he says, did God really say that you are going to die? You're not going to die. You're just going to be like him. And so that's original sin. It's like you are God instead of God is God.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting. And then when he talks to Jesus, he says the same kind of stuff. He's like, I'm not saying you are the Son of God, but if you are the Son of God, do this, try it out, try it out. Not saying you're not. I'm just saying maybe you aren't. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there. Yeah.
In addition to Satan's goal of disconnecting people from God, curious y'all's opinion on what's the goal of that? Like, if there's an ultimate goal of Satan, is it control? Is it to create suffering?
Yeah.
Well, I would say in his person, in the person of Satan as a being, I would say it's to draw worship away from God and just either draw worship to him or draw worship to yourself, and to simply replace God as the authority in your life or in the universe. In the sense of like the grand scheme of things, like good and evil, I think very recently I've been very drawn to, there's an idea in a lot of Western philosophy that ultimate good or God is identified with being and existence and liberty. And evil is just a deficiency of good. Evil has no being really in and of
That makes
itself.
sense.
It's just a defect of good, because all of God's creation, everything he created for all of eternity, is good in itself.
Yeah.
And Satan represents a rebellion against that and a deficiency of good. So the ultimate evil is death. It's non-being. It's non-existence. And I think on the grand scheme of things, you can find anything that you identify as evil. I think you can find a way philosophically that it's drawing you towards non-existence rather than existence.
Makes sense. So it's kind of like, metaphorically, if in this room, if God is oxygen, gives you life, it's a beautiful thing. It's a miracle. So Satan's agenda is suck the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say too, the way that I would look at the devil too, and other people have said this, other theologians have said that there's nothing that the devil can create. So what he does is he takes God's creation and he twists it.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, like I love that you deal with the trans stuff, because he's taking that's what he's doing there, taking God's creation, taking God's design and his intention and his purpose, because God's an architect as well as an artist. And so he is like taking this beautiful thing that God created and he's twisting it to make it into his own image. And only because he hates God. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Yeah. So it says, like he's like a roaring lion looking for who he may devour, like to destroy. He loves chaos, like those types of things.
Yeah. And I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but I think I just started menstruating for the first time.
Do you need a pad or something? I think I have. We have something here.
I would like a pad.
Try the bathroom.
Well, what's interesting about the trans stuff in this conversation also, it's not just, I don't think evil isn't just non-existence, but it's the false, it's the untrue.
Right.
And God in and of himself he's the perfect being. So in this trans ideology, there's this concept that God can make a mistake, or that you can be born in the wrong body, or that there's something wrong with, the nature that God created, that there's something out of place with it, which
not
makes
that this
no
isn't
theological sense. Yeah.
Not that it
There's
isn't a
sin in the
fallen
world.
creation. Yeah, right.
But they're putting the error on either God or the creation itself.
Right.
Yeah. And on that note, we know one of the first principal objectives of communism is disconnect people from God. Kind of, it makes you wonder, communism being the complete work of the devil. And I think disconnecting people from God nowadays, one of the ways the devil's trying to do that isn't by talking about God, but is talking about gender. Because to your point, if you can convince someone, hey, you were actually born in the wrong body, then you're thinking, well, God makes mistakes. Then you're thinking, well, if there was a God, he wouldn't make mistakes. Right. Therefore, to the degree I believe in the gender ideology is the degree that I'm basically convincing myself God doesn't exist. So I think with the radical stuff happening with gender ideology, I do believe, to the best of my thinking, that's what is the principal objective of this gender ideology. It's getting people disconnected from God.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's all designed for that. I mean, every type of sin or brokenness, I think, is designed by nature to do that. Thank God we have a God that pierces through some of that stuff to come after us and pursue us. through that and wake us up and invite us into relationship with him. But, without him, we're lost, And so, gosh, what an amazing thing. You're talking about prayer. You talk about prayer a lot. I know we're getting kind of theological for like a comedy podcast, but
yeah, this isn't funny.
Yeah,
it's not funny.
That's good. I think you got to be smart to be a comedian, though. So like, it's interesting to have you guys talking.
You can be incredibly dumb
and
as a comedian. Yeah. Here I am.
Yeah.
Imagine that you just want to express what you believe. Now, imagine having to spend more than a decade in court just to do that. That's what's still happening to Colorado cake artist Jack Phillips. He's been relentlessly harassed by the state of Colorado and an activist because of his beliefs. But our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom are standing by his side and they need your help. Join with ADF and be a champion for freedom. ADF is on the front lines defending Americans like Jack in court, free of charge, when their First Amendment freedoms are on the line. And for just $19 a month, you can stand with people like Jack too. So visit joinadf.com/B and pledge your monthly gift of $19 or more to ADF. ADF is committed to the long game of protecting freedoms now and for generations to come. And I am too. Are you? Because it's really important. Go join adf.com/B and be a champion for freedom with your monthly gift or any amount of gift today.
Yeah, that's funny. You do talk about prayer, though, and the power of prayer. I'm talking about, what is prayer to you?
It's a great question. To me, prayer is, at the very basic form, intentional communication to God, surrendering to God, realizing, hey, God's will is much stronger than my own. So let me humble myself and surrender to the, infinite power of God and ask for support. I think it takes a lot of humbleness to get out of our narcissistic human tendencies and realize, yes, there's something way more powerful than me. It's God. And also, I need God's support. We are very needy, and it takes humbleness to acknowledge our neediness. So yeah, intentional communication with God through humbleness and surrender in an ultimate effort to receive God's support. And I would also say to put our minds at ease that we are being supported by God, and God's plan is more important than our ego's plan for ourselves.
I like this. I love worship. So that's one of the things I like to do with God. I also lead worship at my church. I do all that stuff. I feel like worship functions in a very similar way, because it focuses your eyes and your attention and your heart upon God, recognizing that He is authority. He's above us. He's here. He's sovereign. He's in charge. I can remind myself of this. You created these things. I worship you, Lord. And then what that does is it fixes our perspective, so that when we look at everything else, it puts it all in the right order. Yeah. Otherwise, we start to kind of look at other things. We can't, like insurmountable problems or things that you're facing in your life. But when you worship God or you pray to God and you're like, Lord, actually, I want your will, not my will, but your will, like Jesus prayed. Yeah. Then it kind of changes your perspective on everything else.
It does. And asking for the will of God, or asking ourselves to better allow the will of God to live through us, through our words and actions and thoughts. To me, it takes a lot of surrender to do that, because I think there's a few levels to consciousness. Level one is just complacency. You're living in life. You have no ambition. You're just kind of complacent, taking what comes along, but you're not trying to move the needle. You're just kind of in surviving mode. And then level two, I would call it the ambition phase, where it's like you've got drive, you know what you want, and you're going after it. And that's awesome. That is a powerful phase to be in. It's way more enlivening than the complacent phase. But then level three is being a servant to God, where you recognize what I want for my life. and you put that aside to allow what wants to live through you to be the primary focus in your life. And of course, what wants to live through us is God's plan, God's will. And I think when we function at level 3 enough, where we're surrendered to God and connected to God, we eventually learn to want, not what we want, but we learn to want what God wants of us, because we realize, oh, the only way to have real happiness, real meaning, a real sense of purpose. I'm not talking about gratification or dopamine hits or we feel safe and significant and in control. We realize, oh, being a servant to God in whatever form that is, that's the only way to have those deep, meaningful feelings. And I'm living a meaningful life. I'm on purpose. Therefore, I can actually be happy. So we start to want what wants to live through us. And we recognize, which, dude, it's scary. You have to recognize what you want. And I think oftentimes what we want for our lives, it's built out of either making us feel more significant or more in control.
How do you know, you say that God talks
I just
to you.
know.
How do you know who it is? Yeah, like how do you know his voice? And you just know these things.
Yeah.
Now, how do you know his
I
voice?
knew you were going to ask that.
Yeah, I'm interested because, you know, that we talk to a lot of people who listen to God and how I just am always interested to know.
Yeah.
Like how they hear. Like, what are the ways you hear? I know there's ways to do
it. The way I hear God, you know, first of all, I'll certainly say I'm not the perfect listener, but I think the best way I know how to hear, for me, God shows up through feelings. Carl Jung once said, feelings are the language of the soul. I don't seem to get a lot of communication from God through the English language where audible or visual words show up and like, okay, here's the plan. Thank you for that paragraph of notes, Scott. For me, it's more feelings. And it's kind of like, I want to follow my heart. And it's like, well, what's that mean? Mm-hmm. When I'm faced with a decision or thinking about something, if I quiet my mind and kind of be in a relative place of peace or white space, I'm thinking about a decision, and, you know, option A, option B, however many options there are. I think for me, God shows up, you know, when I'm like looking at the more divine path, I'll have a feeling of inspiration, you know, but a sense of levity, almost like energy moving up in my body. And then on the other options, I'll feel a super subtle sense of heaviness. And I don't know if that's actually the right way, wrong way to do it, but that's how I've been doing it and trying to listen.
I think that's an interesting way to describe it. I have a similar, if you were to, I've never really analyzed like my feelings when it comes to when I'm listening to God, but I guess maybe that would be an accurate way to describe the feeling that I get when I'm sort of, when you can get confirmation about a decision or something like that.
And how's God's voice show up for y'all?
That's a good question.
I would say I don't know that I could articulate what it is. I would say I try to, in prayer, you know, kind of get a sense of, you know, what message I'm open to receiving back when I pray. I do turn to the Bible to, you know, read scripture, I think, when I'm looking for that guidance. I do believe God communicates with people. What I was going to ask you, what I think is hard about, I don't often use the idea of feelings. I think there's like a conscience. I kind of describe it as conscience. Because what I was going to ask you with feelings is, how then do you differentiate that from the people on the left, or for instance, the transgender movement, or these people that would say, no, this is what I feel. These are my feelings. I'm being, how do they know that that's, they might describe as, no, God told me I'm this. This is my feelings. Yeah. Is there a way to distinguish?
Or is there an authority that is above those feelings, or something you can compare it to and say, all right?
Because like following your heart, if your heart's in line with God, that's a good thing. If you're not in line with God, following your heart is the thing that can lead you away from Him.
Of course. And in speaking in theoretical land, I think our heart is always aligned with God. I think our awareness and interpretation of our heart, that's where it can get skewed. And I think that's a great question. The distinction between, someone on the left, like put the anti-vaxxers in jail.
Yeah.
Like this is, that's what God wants.
feeling we should murder them.
Yeah.
The MAGA people need to be deprogrammed.
We probably do. Let's face it. But yeah, first of all, I would say that can be a trick of the devil for sure, and like a cunning trick. And I would say that the feeling distinction, we're not talking about emotions here. So when you feel outrage, you're like, don't listen to that. Like observe it, maybe try to go underneath that. But I need the waters calm. If I have ripples on the surface of my emotional lake, I'm not hearing and feeling the subtle things there. And then so I think that's probably the best distinction. This is not an emotion. It's just more of a sense of levity versus a little bit more closed down.
Lightness of heart.
Yeah.
There's a peace.
Yeah.
So do you see your work in comedy on YouTube now as a way that you're serving God? Do you see that as connected to serving God through comedy and through what you do?
I do. I might just be a narcissist sitting here like, dude, of course my work is serving God. It's very godly. But I do see it that way. My goal isn't to make people laugh. That's like a secondary goal. The primary goal, I use the language of comedy to help awaken people to protect, preserve, and celebrate the greatest God-given gift we'll ever be given, which is freedom. And for me, a little play on words, not super accurate, but I'll say it anyway. For me, freedom is synonymous with God. That's
a great point. Yeah.
We're born in freedom with this gift of free will. I think freedom is God's way. It's expansive. That's why evil, it constricts, it controls. It's the absence of God. So yeah, and I could probably update my mission statement, but the one I formed a few years ago during the beginning of COVID was help awaken people to protect, preserve, and celebrate freedom. But really underneath that mission statement is the truer mission statement of help awaken people to connect more to God. Mm-hmm. And in none of my work do I have the agenda of convincing people to think a certain thought about whatever the subject matter is. I don't want to do that because one, I might be wrong. Like I guarantee I'll disagree with myself about a lot of things 5 years from now. So I don't want to convince people what I think. What I want to convince people to is get reconnected to God. Mm-hmm. Like you don't need to have some disseminator of information. If you're getting people to connect with God, you're letting God be the source of information and guidance in people's lives. So back to what I said a few minutes ago, I think the biggest problem in the world is, I wouldn't say an absence of God because, God's everywhere. Yeah. But an absence of awareness, connection, and following God. So that's the mission of my work, is ultimately reconnect people to God.
I love that. Ministry is a lot like that. Somebody put it really simply. Once they said that ministry is simply just pointing people to Jesus and connecting them to Jesus. You just have to get out of the way.
Yeah.
So.
The 10 questions.
We just have the 10 questions now. All right, don't look at the question. All right, this is rapid fire. We're going to do this.
These are the questions we ask all of our podcast guests.
Yeah, this is this is the first time we've ever done these 10. These are the first time. Yeah, these are new.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Adam, you don't look very excited.
Well, we've done 3
iterations.
There's certain questions I like and certain ones I don't like, so I haven't seen these yet. So I'll judge them after the fact. You'll see on my face as I read them whether I like them or not. Have you ever been to Sizzler?
No.
Okay, Star Wars or Star Trek?
The first 3 Star Warses, Star Wars. After that, not on board with Star Wars. So
just first and no Star Trek.
I'm not Star Trek phobic. I think it's great. As a kid, it was one of the shows my dad would watch, so I'd see it in the periphery quite a bit. I think the first 3 Star Wars movies have a lot of originality, creativity, and actual wisdom in there. You know, the whole arc of the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, insert other words that make me sound intelligent.
Yeah, you sounded really smart there for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is one I'm going to make a face at. Do you want to win the war on terror, yes or no?
Yes.
I'm not a fan of that question.
No, I'm pro Hamas, you know.
Yeah. Bunch of jerks. Anyway, did dinosaurs have feathers?
No.
What's your favorite fast food cheeseburger?
In-N-Out Burger, double with cheese and grilled onions.
Peppers?
I've never done that. I didn't know that was an option.
So animal style, peppers. That's what you got to do.
Are these jalapenos?
They are, I think, banana peppers.
The little yellow ones?
Yeah, banana.
Nice.
They're really, really good.
Dude.
That's the way to go.
Animal style
time.
with peppers.
Yeah, because that's like the grilled onions and everything. It's like
Great.
delicious. Yeah,
I love that.
glad you can. Just write it down. It's good. Was the 2020 election rigged?
Yes. Yeah.
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
They're good.
Yeah,
I like that these are good for rapid fire. That you don't get to like explain it at all. Just yes or no.
Yes.
Yes or
I
no?
am an election denier. Next.
Conspiracy
You could
theorist.
hang out with any 3 people, living or dead. Who would you pick?
Probably alive people.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, dead people would be
good
lame.
choice.
Yeah.
Super lame.
Yeah, and I think the 3 people would be, my 2 grandfathers and my grandmother on my mom's side. And apologize to my grandmother on my dad's side. I'd like her to be there too, but if it's only 3,
We kind of
just
excluded her with
yeah.
only giving you 3 to pick from.
Yeah, it wasn't her fault. Yeah.
It was.
it wasn't-
She committed suicide.
Oh.
It was definitely her fault. She didn't commit suicide, for the record.
I was going to say that was very dark.
After,
Yeah, it was
this,
very-
after this uplifting podcast, we just end. It just fades to black.
One concert any band in history. Who would you see?
I'm a big Dave Matthews fan, but I've seen him in concert a couple times. He's also gotten a little bit woke, which is
He's a little weird
fishy.
these days. Yeah,
Yeah, dude, Elvis. Elvis.
Nice.
that's a good answer.
You've been appointed to the Supreme Court. What do you ban? Apparently, the Supreme Court bans things in this question.
They're the totalitarian.
yes, they're legislating from the bench.
Yeah. What do
What's
I
the
ban?
thing that you would ban?
Yeah, I ban censorship.
Good.
I like that. Who is Jesus?
Jesus. Well, I would say Jesus was the Son of God and an incarnation for people to acknowledge for the purpose of getting closer to God.
That's good. All right. Well, I think that's number 10.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
It was such
Oh,
an
right
interesting
on.
discussion. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was awesome having you here.
Really nice having you. Thank you.
Heck yeah, I appreciate
Be
you
sure
guys
to
having me.
check out. You have a stand-up special out right on your own website,
Yeah, you guys stand-up special.
and subscribe on YouTube.
You'll find everything at my website, awakenwithjp.com.
Awesome.
You also have a new Brave book.
Yes.
Isn't that true? Yeah. So tell us about that real quick and then go check it out.
Yeah, hot off the presses, just released a children's book with Brave Books. They do amazing work bringing pro-God, pro-freedom, pro-America messages to children at a time where we have this significant problem of there is so much information, entertainment, books, movies engineered to invade the minds of children with what a lot of us would judge to be very degenerated, harmful messaging that
Evil.
probably sways kids away from God. So I think we not only need to protect children from that, but we also need to provide positive solutions that instill good morals and values in children and get them closer to God. So that's why I wrote this book. The specific message in the book is the number one message. If I could only teach my son one thing, instill one thing in him, it would be the message in this book. So I wanted to bring that to families.
What's it called?
It
What's your book
is called Chomp, 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 the Snap Fast Challenge. Chomp, Chomp, Chomp for short. And you can get it at bravebooks.us.
Guys,
Awesome.
go check out bravebooks.us. Thank you, JP. This was awesome.
Right on. Thank you for having me, guys.